Just for the tape, it's like 90 degrees outside, which is why I'm wearing shorts. So just in case you're wondering if you're watching this in the winter. How many have gotten something good so far? You know, something that really stunned me is what Rachel shared, how she struggles about meeting people, because it doesn't seem that way to me. It seems like you're totally natural and all that kind of stuff. So praise God for how you were raised. All right, so I'm going to talk about some of the practical considerations. You should have some notes going around. Here's the thing. First of all, small groups are biblical. I mean, the idea of churches meeting in people's homes was way back in the book of Acts, and Paul addresses it in Romans, 1 Corinthians, Colossians. People had churches that met in their homes. That said, it's not going to be like typical church. Now, most of you here, I think, have been involved in small groups and stuff. There's some benefits to that because you can get to know one another on a deeper level. You can share one another on a deeper level. But as Ted and Bill demonstrated, there's also that dynamic of things can be spontaneous and maybe sometimes a little bit embarrassing. So, you know, that said, that's something to have your hearts prepared for. One of the big things is small groups are informal, and that means it's more ad hoc. That things can change, things can adjust, but there still needs to be structure. So here's a couple recommendations. Just have a fixed start time and a fixed end time. You know, just know, and have that in agreement at the beginning. Hey, you know, this small group's going to be 2 hours, or it's going to be an hour and a half, or, you know, we're going to typically do this small group in about an hour, or something like that. You know, or we'll be done in an hour, and then we'll have refreshments or whatever, and you can stick around after that. You need to meet regularly because we are people of yes. And so if it's every other week, let it be every other week. If it's every week, that's even better, because then people, you know, it's Tuesday, oh, I got a small group tonight. Every other week, we'll just know, oh, last week we didn't have small groups, so next week we will, or something like that. If you do it the first and second Tuesday of the month, it gets confusing, because it's like some months have 5 Tuesdays. What are you going to do? You know, it gets confusing. But that said, I mean, just keep some kind of regularity to it. My recommendation is do it weekly. That's my recommendation. If you can't and you got to do it biweekly, that's fine. Just stick to it. I'm big on, hey, you got start time, just like Kirk. You know, it's like, hey, we're starting now. You know, and 5 minutes later we got started. But I mean, but you start at a certain time. You start because otherwise you're teaching people to come late. You know, and that's why, you know, we have this thing where, you know, for a while at the church service, when we started church service, I got up and started the service. There might have been only 5 people in the auditorium and everybody else was in the hallway. I'm still starting the service because we're going to start on time because we're doing this on the internet now. And the idea is, hey, somebody's, you know, it's 10 o'clock, somebody's in New Hampshire, and they want to enjoy our service. And so 10 o'clock, they're like, hey, what's going on? It's 10 o'clock. Nobody's there, you know? So, you know, starting on time is important. Let's talk about space. All right. My preference is a circle of chairs so that everybody can see each other. Everybody's important. That's very important. And I think Janet mentioned having some folding chairs available. And in the past, we made it available, you know, if people want to borrow some from the church, I'm sure that's still the case, borrow some folding chairs. If we run out of folding chairs, I have some at my home that you can have if you clean them up, because they're in my barn right now. But anyway, you can have them. But have some folding chairs. And here's the deal. Always have that extra empty chair. So, like, suppose you got 12 people in your small group, and you got 12 seats set out, and everybody shows up, and then somebody else comes. Uh-oh. Now what do we do? You know, and you know, do you make more room on the couch? You know, some people are like, hey, this is my, you know, I happen to have quite a bubble around me, And it's like, don't get too close, And so have an empty chair. Have an empty chair or maybe a couple empty chairs for that person that may come. And that said, I heard a statistic once, it's probably on the internet, so it must be true, but it's like this. 20% of people will come to church if invited. 20%, that's 1 in 5. So think about that with regard to your small group. Invite, if you invite 5 new people, chances are one of them will come. It's uncanny. And it's kind of like when we did work parties. It was uncanny. I would get like 20 people say, yes, I'm going to be at the work party. And just by chance, 5 of the 20 wouldn't show up. Okay? But 5 more that didn't say they were going to come would show up. It just seems to be the way the numbers work. So yeah, always have the extra chair there so you can grow. Have folding chairs, very important. Okay, parking is a big deal. You've got to have adequate parking at your place. Otherwise, it's not going to work out. And I'll tell you something. I'm speaking from experience here. Because in the summer, I can host 30 people at my place. In the winter, not so many. Because we've had to pull people out that were stuck, at my place. So maybe in the winter, maybe 12 people. And the parking thing is especially a problem because something we found out at our church. Most churches, when you design the church, you got seating for 200, so then you have 1 parking space for every 4 people. Well, that doesn't work here. You got to have like 1 parking space for every 2 people. I don't know, maybe husband and wife, they don't want to get an argument on the way to church, so they drive separately, Good idea. Huh? Works for you. I know when my teens or when my kids were teenagers and all living at home, I think everybody drove, Kathy and I were the only ones that rode together, and even then sometimes we didn't ride together. But anyway, here's the deal. If you live on I live in the country now, so it's like, I got a long driveway. I guess people could park in the driveway and end, and, last one comes is the first one to leave. But if you live in town, you'll want to alert your neighbors to the fact that you're going to have a small group. And you know what? It's a great opportunity to invite them. Just say, hey, we're going to have a small group. You're invited to come. That way, if it's noisy, I won't call the cops on you. But we have actually had the cops called one occasion when we had a small group. This lady freaked out. All these cars are in front of her house. She lived right across from us, so she called the police. Police come knocking on the door. They're like, what's going on? I'm like, we're having a Bible study here. Is that against the law? And everything. And well, your neighbor, she called. She's upset because all these cars are on the street. And I'm like, is it illegal? It's not. But anyway, so make sure you contact your neighbors so they know what's going on. And like I said, it's a good opportunity for invitation. All right. Refreshments, a lot was already talked about with regard to refreshments. My recommendation is do it at the end so you can get the group going right away, but some people like doing it at the beginning to kind of lead people in. My thinking is always, if there's a mess, I want to get the meat of the word out there first before you're distracted with cleaning up the mess or whatever. I think it's best to have somebody else in charge of refreshments if you can, so it's not all on the host family. Have you ever heard of refrigerator rights? Okay, some of you know what I'm talking about. Okay, there's certain people that when they come to my house, I have given them refrigerator rights, which means they can go in and get whatever they want out of my refrigerator and eat it. And like Jack Twynham, he has refrigerator rights, and I know whenever he visits that there'll be less cheese in my refrigerator after he leaves, because that's the first thing he'll go for. Yeah. But anyway, you want to make sure that whoever you put in charge of refreshments has refrigerator rights, okay, and make that happen. It's also good to get people in the habit of bringing something, a bag of chips or whatever. And that way you can kind of find out what people like and what they don't like. A very good point about allergies. Somebody brought up allergies anyway. Some people are really into gluten-free. Some people are really into no peanut butter. Peanut butter oil, things cooked in peanut butter oil and stuff like that. And especially when you got kids going on, it's almost like some kids have a death wish. I mean, they're allergic to peanut butter. And if there's, peanut butter cookies, they dive for them. It's like, I gotta have them, And then you hear everybody's getting their EpiPens out ready to stab the kid, because he's gonna go in epileptic shock. It's like, what's up with that, But anyway, it's helpful if everybody gets in the habit of bringing something. And the thing about the pets is also very important too. My mom hated dogs. So what's up with that? She sits in a chair and the person's dog comes to her. I mean, there's 30 people in the room and the dog comes to her and puts its head on her lap. Love me. They sense it. They know. So anyway, as already mentioned, be ready for spills. Carpet cleaner, it's really a good idea. Also those little handheld vacs, and everything. If you ask April, she will tell you no red Kool-Aid. Nothing red, okay? No red food dye or whatever. And if you have delegated having somebody else bring snacks, have a backup plan. Those little packages of microwave popcorn kind of go a long way. They can be made up in an instant. And snacks don't have to be real elaborate or whatever. I used to, no bakes. Everyone knows what no bakes are? All right. Well, my definition of no bakes are store-bought cookies because I didn't bake them. So I'll bring a bag of Oreos. They're no bakes to me because I didn't bake them. There you go. So anyway.
That's crazy.
Speaking of kids, and I love small groups and I love kids, but I'm going to be honest with you right now. Kids can be a small group killer. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a numbers game. Maybe it's because I love kids and just attract people with kids or whatever. But, I mean, do the numbers. You have a couple, and the average couple probably has more than 2 kids. So they've multiplied themselves. They haven't just replaced themselves. They've multiplied themselves above and beyond, And so you do the numbers. Okay, so I have 4 couples come into my small group, and they each have 3 kids. That means I've got 12 kids. You think, oh, I got 8 people coming. No, you've got 8 plus 12. You now have 20 people coming to your house, all right? And so you need to prepare. You need to prepare for the kids. You need to prepare for the kids. And my recommendation is to hire a babysitter. It's money well spent. A matter of fact, a lot of times if people know that money is being paid, they'll chip in. You can even have a little tip jar, or something that people could throw money in for the babysitter. And it's imperative that you have a separate room for the kids because they're going to be noisy and all that kind of stuff. And, some kind of video for them to watch. Be careful with that because there's some people that don't like certain videos that they think is, not good or whatever. Maybe you're a little bit, you're more open or whatever. Be careful with that, but get the parents' agreement. Hey, what kind of videos do you guys like? And if they're very picky, could you bring some? Yeah. Put it on them. Put it on them to bring some. We've done this many different ways. We actually had a small group one time where we rotated. Each couple that were in the small group would babysit the kids at some time. We did that kind of rotation. And it was kind of interesting because one time a couple came with their kids, brought the kids into the small group, and then left and went on a date. while we're having small group. And it's like, all right. All right. Oh, I got stories. I got stories.
Who are these people?
You probably know them. Anyway, yeah, my recommendation is hire a babysitter. Sometimes you say, well, the oldest kid in the group could be the babysitter. That doesn't always work. They need an authority figure. I have had broken furniture and stuff like that. Kind of like what Janet says, you know, don't love your possessions too much. I mean, if you have fine bone china, you need to put that in the attic, okay? Or these figurines, unless you like heads that get knocked off. I mean, all right, so. You know, if your child has a toy that they love that's easily broken, hide it before a small group, stuff like that. I mean, have stuff out that's willing to be broken. I'm a grandpa now, and there's this corner in our living room where we have a basket full of toys for the kids to play. Matchbox toys, great. Very difficult to break unless they throw it against the window. Then usually the window breaks first. But anyway. Legos are great, but don't get into the Star Wars Legos because there's little pieces the kids put in their mouth and swallow. I don't know what, I have a 2.5-year-old granddaughter and she likes putting pebbles in her mouth, And I had that talk with my grandson today. He likes these toys with little batteries in them, and he takes the toys apart all the time. And then the little batteries, I said, I'm not gonna let you play with this anymore because she likes to put little things like that in her mouth. And that's, batteries, it's not good. I don't mind pebbles so much. I mean, it kind of passes through the system. Or so I've heard. Anyway. With kids, okay, here's the deal. When you start your small group, if you got kids, the time clock is going, okay? You got to be aware. Okay, so if you have a video and it's 1 hour and 20 minutes, that's how long your small group's going to go, and then maybe refreshments afterward, okay? And if you got little kids with refreshments, be mindful about the allergies and stuff like that. Be mindful of spills, because it's going to happen with little guys. You might want to keep the table for the little guys and let the adults sit in the living room when the food part comes. But that said, some people come and they really need to be ministered to. And I'll tell you something. A lot of people, when they, your kids may be better behaved than theirs, but that's a good opportunity for you to minister to them about their kids. Bill Powell has some testimonies about, him dealing with his son and trying to feed him cookies during the small group all the time to keep him occupied and stuff like that. A good opportunity for, afterward they say, how come your kids are so well behaved? And Kirk would say,
they didn't come that way.
Exactly. They didn't come that way. Great opportunity to minister. I don't know, do I have anything else on my notes? I'm done. Have you guys got everything? All right, any questions or comments for the good of all?
Years ago, when our kids were little, we were in a home group that had, how many kids did they have?
Probably 30.
Probably had 30 kids in a home group that was 7 couples, something like that. And what we did was we would kind of rotate, and we'd have a study for the children too. So they were all homeschooled kids to begin with, so that they used to kind of be in a group that had all different age groups levels. But we'd have like one of the parents or one couple would take the children that week, and they would do a study for the children. And then it would rotate, and then the kids would have, if it was summertime and they could be outside, then they'd have a supervised area that they were allowed to be in, and maybe a supervised game of some kind.
All right.
And a lot of those were great times. I mean, I remember because as a homeschooled mom, I needed a small group, and it was very important for us and everybody I think that was in that home group to be able to have a place that we could go and go with our children.
Right.
Those were lifetime friendships.
Oh,
Yeah.
Our
absolutely.
kids are still friends.
Our kids are still friends with those kids. We're still friends with those adults.
Right.
It was
So, you know, that's a good example of something where if you have it regularly, you can actually plan for it. So if you know that you're going to have 30 kids, you got 7 couples, that's a lot of couples to start with, and you know you're going to have 30 kids, it's something you can plan on and actually build around, where it becomes a meaningful time, not just here, watch a video while we have some, you know, spiritual time. You can make their time as spiritual as yours. So that's something that you definitely can build upon. And let me say this too. You know, we homeschooled, and I actually taught a homeschool gym and swim at the YMCA, and it was interesting because you got little kids and big kids together playing together, and kids can actually play together. And it was funny because my youngest son, Ryan, it was interesting because he didn't have many kids his own age, but he got used to playing with kids that were younger than him and with kids that were older than him. So, you know, it worked both ways. And it was really a benefit to their, for lack of a better word, soul, to use Gary's word. It was a benefit to their soul that they actually, you know, were able to do that. Anything else? Yes?
So I really appreciate you addressing that. Maybe we can talk about this. I feel like there's different philosophies of parents. So some parents really believe that their children should be in the group with them, and they should learn how to behave, and they should be hearing that teaching. Other parents are like, I need a break from my kids, you know, and they're okay with their kids being separate. I've also been a part of groups. I had 4 kids, so it was like really hard to go anywhere or do anything. And it was like, even when the kids were taken care of, when my son was a baby, we used to pay a babysitter so we could go to a Bible study. But then once I had more of them, then that becomes more of a challenge. And I remember with babies, I felt as a mom, like I'm not able to get anything from this group because I'm nursing the baby, I'm watching kids, I'm like doing all that. So I think really families is a really sensitive issue. And then the other thing, I've also had bad experiences where kids are all in a separate room and then they're going crazy, and we all know, right? Yeah. And then that's not a good scenario either. So I think it's something that the group is going to probably have to decide. It's going to be really a prayerful thing.
Yeah, it's
scary. I mean,
yeah.
it's scary.
There are different philosophies, and there's some benefits to having kids involved in a group, but my personal experience and my personal feelings are this is a really good opportunity for adults to grow together. And like Diane was sharing earlier, she was around kids all day. That was her opportunity to have adult time. And sometimes adults need to have adult type conversations and stuff like that. And you know, little ears don't need to be present for that. And there's an opportunity for ministry to take place.
One comment on that, Paul. I know when we did small groups when our boys were younger, we would always have them in for like the first half, which was usually worship, and we usually do scripture reading. You know, we do like an extended portion of scripture. We have them be part of the reading, you know, and then we'd excuse them, you know, to the mayhem room. And
Yeah.
See, someone's got to be in charge of the mayhem room.
Right, yeah. It's imperative to have an authority figure in charge of the mayhem room, or whatever you want to call it, kids area, so that even if there's all they're doing is watching a video, there needs to be some adult in there to run interference and stuff like that. There's a couple other things you said that brought back. Yeah, no, that's okay. You kind of have to have agreement within the group too about how things are done. Nursing. You mentioned nursing. Sometimes, you know, moms will be nursing and they'll just shove the kid's head under their shirt, and you know, and everybody's good with that. And then other times people feel uncomfortable with that. You just got to figure it out. Don't be surprised if something like that happens. All right, and if it is something that you find, you know, a little bit over the top, you just need to, you know, have your wife or somebody address that with the person or whatever. Have some lady address it. But you know, it is what it is. I mean, you know, you got different philosophies and stuff like that. I personally don't have a problem with that, but you know, it's where, you know, where everybody's from. So yeah, you kind of got to build kind of an understanding of that. Here's something to consider when we're talking about kids. If like attracts like. So if you have a group that have a lot of kids, they're going to attract more kids. That's just kind of the way it is. If you have a group there's absolutely no kids, chances are you're not going to gain many kids. That's kind of seems to be the way it works. So just keep that in your back mind. Any other thoughts or comments? Yeah.
Having an idea of how to address, you know, like kids that are climbing your bookcase, and the parents are just, you know, you're inviting people in that aren't church. They don't understand discipline, things like that. And they're talking, and there's plain view of your child climbing the bookcase, and they don't stop it. So there has to be, you know, people have to know how to handle that they aren't offending the parents, because a lot of parents don't believe in discipline.
Right. Yeah.
So that's a concern.
Yeah, that's true. You know, the question is, what if somebody's kid is climbing your bookcase and it's in full view of the parent? And I'll tell you something. That is always the most frustrating area. Is, you know, what people will allow their kids to do, and it's something I found very interesting with kids too. Is when the kids' parents aren't there, you are the authority, and they pretty much do what you say. And then all of a sudden, the parent comes into the room, and it's almost like the kid turns into this ogre, and he starts jumping on the couch and yelling and screaming. You're like, what just happened here? You just saw authority change from you to the parent, and you just found out what that parent allows. And so, again, opportunity for ministry. You know, hey, you know what? When your kid climbs the bookcase not always is screwed into the wall. And that could be a killing moment for your child. And if you want your child to live, it's probably a good idea not to allow them to do this. I mean,
I have found it actually easier as I've gotten older, because I can pull the grandma card out. And I can do, oh honey, that's not safe. And I can get them down. So it's actually easier for me now as I'm older and there's someone younger there, but it was more difficult when they were the same age. The other thing I did though when they were younger, it would be the safety thing.
Right.
You know, oh, that's not safe, honey, or I don't allow my kids to do that, so I let's not do it, you know, because they're not allowed to do it. You do that type of thing.
well, it's your house, so you make the rules. So, you know, in my house, we don't climb the bookcase.
Exactly.
You know, in my house, we don't pee in the pool. In my house, we don't, you know, whatever. I mean, whatever it is, in your house, you don't do. You know, like some kids won't have refrigerator rights, and they'll just go into your refrigerator. And you say, oh, no, in my house, you always ask permission to get into the refrigerator. Or in my house, you ask permission to use the restroom even, or something. It's your house, you make the rules. And as long, you know, and you have that right. You have that right to make the rules in your house. You have that right. So so go ahead and make them. And it's okay to make them up as you go along too, because you didn't anticipate that they would be watering the flower with their own water or whatever, you know. You didn't know that was a possibility, or that they would brush their teeth with your toothbrush. You know, I mean, it's to me, it's amazing what. I mean, I'm amazed all the time, because I was raised in a Dutch home with a Dutch culture, and so I go over Americans' houses, and it's like, wow, this is so different. And then I moved to Alliance, Ohio, and it's like, wow, things are really different, you know? Yes, sir.
I think sometimes for us that are older, it's a little bit more of a shock to see what is allowed.
Yeah.
It's nothing, you know, when a couple has recently come to Christ, they're living in the world. So their kids have up to that point been raised by different standards. And I think, you know, 30 or 40 years ago, things were different. I mean, I don't need to explain that to people who are our age, but things are a lot different now. So if you have young couples over, they're not always going to be the best behaved kids in the world.
Right. So that said, you got to be prepared for that and just understand, hey, this is my house, these are my rules. And make up more as they go along as you need be. All right, I'm done.
All right. Well, you gotta be willing to have difficult conversations with people too, you know? And there's again a nice place where when you have a relationship with somebody and they've let their kids run helter-skelter through your house, sit down and talk with them, you know? I know those are conversations that are hard to have, but you know, how do you ever have a conversation with somebody if you need to minister to them about how to discipline children? You gotta approach the subject at some point, you know? And they're not always easy, but people, I mean, hopefully they can tell that you love them. You're not just upset about something. Okay.
Usually after the first kid's duct taped to a chair, the other kids learn.
See what happens? Don't let that happen to you. Get one of those Velcro walls, you know, throw them up on there.
Can I say one more thing?
Oh, please.
As we were just having all this discussion, I just think it's really important to go back to what Janet said and what we talked about, you know, having provision for the children.
Right.
Because, you know, I found having kids at my house, I had some kids that had a really bad reputation, and I was actually afraid to have them at my house. But they were really good. But, I mean, I just had a few coloring books and some games, and that made a world of difference, just having other, maybe older young adults hanging out with them, or, you know, whatever. It made a world of difference. And I also think you have to let kids have a little break sometimes, too. You don't want them climbing your bookcase, but if you know, I've been with other families in the church where it's like they don't tolerate anything out of any kids. It's like, no, you need to sit there, or you need to be quiet, or kids don't always want to just sit there and be quiet. They need something to do. So, that's you, sorry.